sky's the limit, because you got to remember something. With Houston being a formidable threat that they are, a lot can depend on the seedings. Let's say, for example, hypothetically, Max, that it's one of those situations where OKC ends up going up against Houston before they have to go against a Golden State, because Houston's the 2 seed and Golden State's the 1 seed. But OKC ends up being the 3 seed instead of San Antonio. That can make things interesting, because you remember, they get to avoid the Warriors until the conference finals. And who knows what's going to happen in a particular situation like that. I do have questions about OKC's depth. I don't have too much of a question about their starting 5. I think their starting 5 can compete with anybody, even with Roberson going down, because the 4 that you still have left there, 3 of those guys are your primary offensive weapons, and Steven Adams can be a monster when he wants to be. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and the fact that they can elevate their level of defensive play, and anybody at any given moment of the big 3 can explode, whether it's Paul George shooting 43% from three-point range, whether it's Carmelo Anthony taking a step back, only launching a little over 15 shots per game, but still being efficient enough. Russell Westbrook shooting nearly 45% from the field. You look at what they bring to the table offensively, and you know what they can do defensively. Again, the questions about their depth are a problem. But in the end, if you get to avoid Golden State until the conference finals, who knows what that could materialize into. So I look at it from the standpoint that Oklahoma City is capable of making noise against anybody, because they're physical, they're rough and rugged, they come at you. And Russell Westbrook, I can't think of anybody who wants to go against Golden State more than this guy does. The fact that that's a reality makes things very intriguing. Of course, the Warriors are the favorites, but it makes it very, very intriguing, and I love the notion and the possibility of that, and I don't rule out anything right now.
So don't rule out anything. Would that include, meaning the ceiling is they could win a championship this year?
Yeah, I think the ceiling is that they could win a championship. It's slim, but I'm not going to say zero. I'm not going to say zero.
Slim to none, and Slim just left the building. Listen, Stephen A., seeding is important here. It's absolutely important, and it's the reason that their ceiling is, in fact, the Western Conference Finals, but no further. Look, they're built for the playoffs. You look at the Rockets, you wonder, is that going to work in the playoffs? Not just because of the orthodoxy from years ago where, oh, a bunch of jump shooters, it's not going to work. Because we all know it's still about the paint. And the Rockets got 2 guys who can get to the paint, which opens up the shooting, right? So it's just because someone's not, big isn't sitting there posting doesn't mean that it's still not about the paint. That's really, and they have guys who can do that. So I'm not saying we don't know if that's going to work in the playoffs. I mean that we see players on that team who have come up a little small compared to their normal levels of performance in the playoffs. And even in Chris Paul's case, when the numbers haven't been small, the team performance has. And as the leader of the team, I'm sure he accepts that responsibility, right? So, meantime, the Thunder are, their key players, their top 2 players are extremely athletic, not just elite performers in Westbrook and Paul George, but elite athletes, which I think does make a difference in the playoffs. And Carmelo Anthony, even if your game plan is make Carmelo beat you, all right, he might. Carmelo Anthony gets hot, he might beat you if that's the game that, So they are built for the playoffs in several ways, more than some of the other teams, particularly Houston, you would think on paper. In other words, their playoff record you would expect to be better than, or performance you'd expect to be more impressive than their regular season performance. Here's the problem, Stephen A. The seeding matters because they're not going to be a 1 or a 2 seed. I think we can agree on that, right? Therefore, in order to get to the finals, assuming health, like let's assume that no major team has a major catastrophic injury to a key player. Assuming health, they're going to have to upset both the Rockets and the Warriors, whoever they have to play for. Like, that's not going to happen. Maybe they have an upset in them because it turns out that in the playoffs, they're more ready for that kind of game than, let's say, the Rockets. And I doubt it. I doubt they beat the Rockets. But let's say they do beat the Rockets. They ain't going to then turn around and upset the Warriors, too. It's just too much. They're going to have to get a little lucky to even beat one of those teams. And luck does not play that big a role in the NBA as it does in the NFL, Major League Baseball, and other major team sports. I don't see them with 2 best-of-7 upsets in them against demonstrably superior teams.
Well, see, first of all, I disagree from the standpoint of Houston. Now, if you want to say luck with Golden State, I get all of that because Golden State is really about their level of interest combined with their health. And as long as they're healthy and they're focused, it's very, very few teams, if anybody, that can beat them in the NBA on any given night for that matter. But in the case of the Houston Rockets, here's what I think you're missing. Houston is incredibly formidable. That's the ideal matchup, them against Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. It would be sensational. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. But let's understand that the imminent league MVP, as far as I'm concerned, which is James Harden,
sure,
as spectacular as he is, devoid of ball movement, you play right in the OKC hands. If you just about dancing on cats and going one-on-one, that's not going to work. Chances are with Chris Paul there, that's going to be minimized compared to what we saw last year. The flip side to it, however, is that those other guys have to step up and be able to hit shots. I like Eric Gordon. I like Trevor Ariza. To a lesser degree, you got to respect Ryan Anderson because he has a history of being able to hit perimeter shots. That's why he walked into the season being owed $60 million over the next 3 years, because we all know that he can shoot the ball at least from time to time. And Clint Capella is clearly a better fit for that Houston roster than Dwight Howard ever was, even though Dwight Howard is looking pretty decent in Charlotte these days. My point to you is that I have to look at those guys and believe wholeheartedly that under no circumstances are they going to let you down in terms of their ability to hit shots. And that's what I think that you're missing here. You can talk about Golden State with a degree of certainty, and nobody would dismiss that. But we can't talk about Houston with that certainty. Do I believe Houston could do it? You're damn right. They're big time. I understand it. But we have seen no evidence that we can trust that what they do in a regular season, you can rely upon them doing it come postseason. The first round series over OKC, you talking about, even though a couple of them had decent games, that's James Harden's show. All right, and then against the Spurs, he ran out of gas in that last game 6. CP3 there now, probably not going to happen. But I'm still saying, when you go against OKC, who's top 5 offensively, Max, and they're going to prove defensively, it's going to be real interesting to see what they do.
I think you're overlooking something else. You're overlooking coaching here when you talk about the Rockets versus OKC. Billy Donovan was a better playoff coach, I would say, than Scotty Brooks, based on what I've seen. I thought Scotty Brooks was very good in terms of developing talent, made a lot of curious decisions, I thought, in the postseason, and Billy Donovan seemed to motivate them a little bit differently. But Mike D'Antoni's a little different kind of cat. Mike D'Antoni, I'll give you an example from boxing, Stephen A., because you and I used to chop up the NBA and the fight game all the time when we were doing radio in New York in the halls and stuff. When you first watched Mike Tyson coming up, it wasn't just that he was this talent. It's that his trainer, Cus D'Amato, had a very specific kind of game plan for him. So his motions were automatic. His basic strategy was more cohesive than his opponents. And it was almost like a mismatch of strategy. That's the Rockets. Mike D'Antoni has a comprehensive, cohesive kind of offensive strategy that's just different than guys like Billy Donovan. And it helps lesser players, I think, overachieve to begin with. But then when you combine that with 2 MVP caliber players in Harden and CP3, and in CP3, you have a defensive floor general that has improved that defense, that team intensity in terms of defense, leaps and bounds. It's just when you watch Houston, you're watching a different kind of animal than when you watch OKC. They beat the brakes off of teams. Everyone, it seems.
You know what? Watching Golden State last night, Max, even though they won the game against the Clippers because Steph Curry put on the show, we'll get into that in a second, but their defense is still not where you want it to be, nor you expect it to be. You expect more from them. You look at San Antonio, you know defense is going to show up. You look at OKC, despite their struggles here and there, for the most part, you know they're going to show up. Here's the problem with Houston with Mike D'Antoni. When they don't make shots, unlike the other teams that can lock it down, they got questions about Houston. Now, their defense is considerably better this year, and I've noticed that, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is, come playoff basketball with off days, where you're rested, where teams get to game plan for you in preparation for a 7-game series. What we've customarily seen with Mike D'Antoni teams is When they're making shots, they dictate pace, and that changes everything. When they don't, and they have to rely on something else to get them there, Mike D'Antoni has not been able to do that.
All right.
And that is my concern with the Houston Rockets.
Let's keep it moving, though, guys. As far as OKC, we're going to learn a lot on Saturday night, ABC primetime, when they face the Warriors at Oracle. But I want to stay on the West Side. The Dubs entered the All-Star break struggling, going 4-4, but they got back on track last night, taking down the